Okay, so this last set of notes is just kind of a mix of all the things that we didn't talk about too much in the other set of notes. This slide is showing you just kind of a general depiction of what is in your blood at any current time. It's not labeling the plasma, but the plasma would be any of the area that is just white. So all of this in between, sort of like matrix. Remember we talked about matrix back when we did tissues. All of this liquid area, liquid matrix, is plasma, is what the blood cells are floating in. It's what they're dissolved in. It's what they're encased in. And so all of this area is going to be matrix, and it's called plasma in the blood. It makes up about 55% of our total blood volume. It's the majority of our blood is actually plasma, which is mostly water. All right, next up are all the blood cell types. The first and the most, I would arguably say, is the most important to keep you alive are the red blood cells. Remember that the big fancy term for a red blood cell is erythrocyte. So we've talked about that before, so that should sound familiar. Erythrocytes are red blood cells, and their main job is to carry the oxygen around our bloodstream. They do this by having the oxygens binding to hemoglobin, which is a protein found on the red blood cells. Remember, these red blood cells have an unusual shape. It's called biconcave, where it's squished in the middle on both sides. That adds lots of surface area so that we can have more hemoglobins to carry more oxygen. It also has no nucleus as a mature cell. The nucleus dissolves away so that it also provides more surface area, more space for all of these hemoglobins to again be able to bind oxygens. The red blood cells are the most numerous in the blood. They make up about 40% of your blood volume, so quite a bit. The next most numerous blood cells, and they're actually fragments of cells, are platelets. Platelets, there's billions and billions of red blood cells, but platelets, there's about 1 for every 20 red blood cells. So they're less numerous than the red blood cells, but they're the next most. Platelets are a little bit smaller. You can see they're kind of like little pieces, and platelets help to clot the blood. So I'm just going to say help clot the blood, which is if you were bleeding or if you were having an injury, these would help to release different proteins and different chemicals that start the blood to thicken up a little in that area and to seal the wound. So platelets are going to help clot the blood. The third type of blood cells, which are the least numerous, are the white blood cells. And white blood cells are going to be, again, in the least amount. And you can see in this picture, there's actually many different kinds. They're a little bit larger in size, and they usually look purplish when they stain under the microscope. So you can see them looking purplish in this image, but also if you were to look at them in a microscope on a slide at school, they would also look purplish. You would see the least amount of these, and all of them are white blood cells. White blood cells have a fancy name, and that fancy name is called a leukocyte. And there's all different kinds. These are just 4. There's more than that. Neutrophils are the most numerous. And they're mainly to help with your immune system. So most white blood cells have some function in destroying pathogens. A pathogen is like a bad guy. So I'm just going to say kind of in general that they fight against infection. They all have slightly different jobs. Some of those would be to actually destroy the pathogens, to eat up the bacteria, to eat up the viruses. Some give off chemicals to help stimulate other ones. Some will help to mark the bad guys. Some help to release antibodies in your blood, and those help to remember the bad guys so that the next time you get sick, you would be able to fight it off faster. And notice that I called all these white blood cells. It also tells you that down here with that little asterisk. All right, so we're just kind of switch gears because we're kind of doing a little bit of everything today. And in this slide, I'm just going to go through the pathway of blood. So we're going to start with deoxygenated. So I'm going to use blue to represent deoxygenated. Remember, it's not really blue, but deoxygenated blood is going to come in to the heart from the upper body through that superior vena cava right here, and from the lower body from the inferior vena cava right here, and also from that coronary sinus that would be right around there. That would be pumping the blood in back from the outside of the heart. So this is all deoxygenated blood, and it's going to be coming back to the heart because the blood was just in all the different body parts, and it was delivering all the oxygen it had, picking up all the carbon dioxide. So it comes back to the heart. The right atria is going to receive the blood, and then that right atria is going to send that blood through the tricuspid valves and down into the right ventricle. And then the right ventricle is going to contract and squeeze that blood up through the semilunar, which is called the pulmonary semilunar. And then that pulmonary semilunar is going to pump the blood out and out and out. And that's going to go, remember, pulmonary means lungs, so it's going to go out into the lungs. This side over here, which is going out towards the left side, is going to be going to the left lung. And this side over here, which is going to be going out towards the right side, is going to be going to the right lung. Now, I had to kind of go underneath here because the aorta covers it up, so you can kind of see that I let the arrow stop, and then I started again over here. All right, so it's going to go to the lungs. In the lungs, remember, we're going to branch off into smaller and smaller arterioles and then capillaries, and then it's going to be picking up oxygen. So it's going to be going to the lungs. See if I can type that. It's going to go to the lungs, and it's going to pick up the oxygen. So then it's going to come back as oxygenated blood. So let me just kind of fix this real quick. There we go. All right. Going to come back as oxygenated blood, and it's going to come back to the heart. It doesn't go straight to the body. In some animals, it does. It goes straight to the body after it goes to the lungs, but that's not very efficient. It would have lost a lot of its speed, and so we want to pump it back to the heart first to kind of get pumped again to get a little bit more momentum. So the blood's going to be coming in from the lungs, the right lung and the left lung, and it's going to come into the left atria. And now I'm using red to show that it's oxygenated. The left atria is going to contract, so that's going to send the blood down, okay? And it's going to go through the mitral valve down into the left ventricle. That left ventricle is going to squeeze and contract and send the blood up through the semilunar, which is called the aortic semilunar. The aortic semilunar sends the blood then through the aorta, and it has multiple different options of pathways depending on where that artery is leading. So it could be going up to the head, could be going up to the neck, it could be going out to the arms and shoulders, or it could be coming down, and then it goes to the descending aorta, which actually continues down here. And the descending aorta would go all the way down, basically your trunk, your abdomen, and then it splits off into both of your femoral arteries, one in each leg. And then you have a bunch of splittings throughout your body of that descending aorta, one to your liver, one to each kidney, to your digestive system, to your stomach, to all the different areas. And so we use the red blood to show that it's oxygenated. Now, remember, it's going to go to all those body parts, deliver the oxygen that it has just picked up from the lungs, pick up the carbon dioxide, and then it's going to be coming back. And because there's that in between, we kind of show it as purple, and then it's going to be coming back to the heart again, now as deoxygenated blood. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about is blood types. So there was a couple videos that I posted that you're going to want to definitely watch because they're going to talk about it and probably a little bit slower. But blood types are going to be something you talked about freshman year, but they talked about it more in terms of genetics and how you inherit blood types. So I'm going to talk about the blood cells themselves. These are going to be always on red blood cells. So you can see in this picture, they're showing red blood cells. And the different blood types are based off of the antigens that you have on your cell surface. An antigen is basically just a little chemical marker. They're usually made up of proteins or carbohydrates, and they're just these basically little flags, sort of like wearing a uniform. And these little protein chemical markers just indicate or identify what type of cell it is. So all of our cells generally have some kind of antigen, and that's how our body knows that they're ours. Our body recognizes, our immune system, our white blood cells recognize certain antigens that belong in our body. And then if a cell comes along with these different markers, if a cell comes along with an antigen it doesn't recognize, then the white blood cells know to attack. So that's kind of how your white blood cells know which cells should I leave alone, like your liver cells, your kidney cells, your heart cells, your blood cells, or which cells should I attack? Oh, I don't recognize that antigen. I don't recognize that marker. I don't recognize that uniform, and then it would attack. So people with type A blood would have something called an A antigen, and you can see it down here at the bottom. They're just using a made-up shape just to kind of represent that. So they're just using that purpley circle that's on the end. And so they have a certain type of antigen called A antigens. People who have blood type B have a different type of antigen that is going to have a different chemical structure. So they're using that little diamond shape, that teal diamond shape. People that have blood type AB actually have both antigens on their surface. So they have the purple circle and the teal diamond. So their red blood cells have both of these markers. And then people with blood type O, and they actually think that it's kind of was like lost in translation somewhere, but that O blood actually in other countries is called type 0. And so that kind of makes more sense. If you're type 0, you don't have any antigens. There's nothing on the surface. So you can see on this blood cell, there's nothing there. So I kind of like to call it like naked blood cells. So they don't have any markers on their surface. All right, so the thing is, if your body has type A blood, so we'll go back to this guy over here on the left. If you have type A blood, you recognize the type A antigen. However, you would not recognize the type B antigens because you don't have those teal diamonds. So what your body does is it has antibodies. So this gets a little confusing because people get the antigens and the antibodies confused. So when we're in class, I usually say this a few times. We have antigens. Antigens are what's on the surface, and antibodies fight against. Antibodies fight against. Antibodies fight against foreign invaders. Antibodies fight against. So if you have type A blood, you recognize the A antigens, so you can recognize all of these purple circles. That's totally fine. But if a teal diamond came in, let me go ahead and say that you got somebody else's blood and they accidentally gave you somebody with type B blood, then type B blood would be in your system. That's my attempt at a diamond. Okay. And so you get this blood and your body doesn't recognize it. So your white blood cells look, they don't recognize it, and they have these antibodies that will fight against it. And these shapes that you see kind of on the surface here, they look like Ys. Okay, they would be able to bind to that diamond. They would be able to bind to that diamond on the red blood cells that you're getting that you don't have on type B blood. And then they would clump up those blood cells, and then other white blood cells would come destroy. Okay, so let me go back so that you can see all this and say that one more time. If you get blood that is a different blood type, so if you have type A blood, your body recognizes the purple circles. But some doctor accidentally gives you blood type B that has these teal diamonds. They have these B antigens. You will have antibodies. You will have cells that will go and recognize that that does not belong. And these antibodies will go and destroy. There's the Y. And if you have another one over here, the antibodies come and destroy. They mark this blood cell that you got, and then other white blood cells come and destroy it. So that would be dangerous because it's clumping up all of that blood that you just received. And all of that clumping can cause all kinds of issues with your other systems, with your kidneys, and it could eventually cause you to die. So type B blood, same thing, they have B antigens, right? So we see these B antigens on their surface. So their body recognizes those. So what they're going to produce is they're going to produce antibodies. I'm sorry, said that wrong. They're going to produce antigens, okay, against, no, I originally said that right, sorry. Okay, you have type B blood, so you have B antigens. Your body recognizes the B, they recognize those teal diamonds. And if they gave you type A blood, so somebody accidentally gave you type A blood, your body would be like, oh, I don't recognize that. That is not something that's supposed to be here. So you have all these antibodies in your system. That antibody would go and clump. An antibody might go and clump and attach to that new blood that you got that it doesn't recognize. Once those antibodies attach, those little Y antibodies, these guys right here, then that causes those blood cells to clump up. And then that clumping will then be marked for destruction by other white blood cells. And again, it's going to destroy those, which could be very dangerous if you're destroying blood. Again, it can clog different areas and it can ruin your kidneys and cause organ failure. All right, the most interesting type of blood to me is actually group AB. They have antigens for A and B. So they have both types of antigens. They have the purple circles and the teal diamonds. So their body recognizes both. So if you gave them A blood, would their body recognize these purple circles? Would they recognize the A antigens? Yes, they would, because they have A antigens. If you gave that person a, see if I can get teal back. There we go. If you gave them type B blood with the type B antigen, would their body recognize that? Yes, it would. So they don't make antibodies against either because they recognize both of them. So they're not going to have any antibodies. They're not going to fight against any type of blood. They don't have any antibodies. So you can give them any kind of blood and they'll be fine. And then last but not least, type O people, remember type 0, they don't have any antigens. They don't have any markers. So they don't recognize the purple circles. They don't recognize the teal diamonds. So they're going to have antibodies against both of them. So if they got A blood or they got B blood, their body's going to attack both of those. So you can only give type O people type O blood. So that's my next slide. The next and last slide is going to kind of talk a little bit about whose blood can get whose. So this is usually what I do in class after we talk about it, is I'll just kind of do a little example. So if you are type A blood, whose blood could you get? So you can get other A blood. And then I'll say, could I give that person B blood? No, you can't give them B blood because their body would attack it. Then I'll say, well, can I give them AB blood? Well, the A's they recognize, but still they've got those B's and they're still going to attack it. So that's still a no. You still can't give them type AB blood. And then I'll ask, can I give them type O blood? And then usually they get a little confused at this point. My students will be like, ooh, yes, no, maybe, I'm not sure. Let's go back and look at type O blood. Is there anything on this blood cell for your body to attack? Is there any antigen that you don't recognize? The answer is no. There are no antigens on the O blood. So yes, you could get O blood as well because it doesn't have anything to attack. If you're type B blood, you can obviously get other B blood. So if I have type B blood, I can give to other people with type B blood. Could I give them A blood? Nope, their body won't recognize it. Can I give them AB? Well, they'll recognize the B, but still not going to recognize the A. Could I give them type O blood? Again, yes, O blood doesn't have anything to fight against. It's sort of like undercover. It's just a blood cell. It's not your blood cells that we have antibodies against. It's not the blood cell itself. It's not this guy that we're fighting against. It's the things all along the surface, right? So if you think about it, O blood is just a naked blood cell. There's nothing to fight against. So there are no antibodies against the blood cell. There's just antibodies against the antigens. So you can give O blood to anybody. All right, if you have AB blood, okay, you can get A blood, because would your body recognize A's? Sure, it has an A. You can get B blood. Will your body recognize the B's? Sure, it has them. You could get AB blood. You recognize both. Or you could get O blood because there's nothing. So they call these people the universal recipients, meaning they can get anybody's blood. Okay. If you have type O blood, can you get O blood? Sure. Right? Because you're both basically free of any antigens. Could you get A blood? Would your body recognize A's? No, it doesn't recognize A's. Does it recognize B's? No, it sure doesn't. Does it recognize A's and B's at the same time? Good gosh, no, not at all, right? So they call O people the universal donor, because look at who O can give to. O can give to type A blood. O can give to type B blood. O can give to AB blood, and O could give to themselves. So O is the universal donor. So if you have type O blood, which is actually fairly common, I want to say it's like 40% of the population, they'll want your blood all the time because they can take your blood and give it to anybody. All right, so now there's a whole bunch of things that people ask about with positive and negative. So for positive and negative, I'm just going to clear this real quick so you can always go back and look at this. I'm going to clear it. Okay. You have a second antigen. So there's the A antigens and the B antigens, but there's also a second type of antigen called the rhesus antigen. It's a second protein that could be on the cell surface. And so it's just a different kind. So if you were A negative, what that means is your blood cells have the A antigen. I'll just draw it as an A instead of the purple circles. And that's it. You have A and nothing else, A negative. If you're A positive, what that means is your blood cells have the A antigen, right? That purple circle. But you also have the second antigen, which is the rhesus antigen. So I'm just going to draw it as a plus. So you have two kinds of antigens. If you're B negative, just like before, you have the B, and that's all. If you're B positive, though, not only do you have that B antigen on your surface, trying to draw it upside down, there we go. You also have this second antigen called the rhesus antigen on your surface. AB people that are negative have the A's and the B's, just like before. A and B. AB positive people have the A's and the B's, just like before. But they also have that second antigen. Well, I guess they have a third antigen called the rhesus antigen. They're positive for it. O negative people have nothing. They just have red blood cells. Okay. O positive people don't have A's or B's, but they do have the positive antigen. They have the rhesus antigen. All right, so who really is the universal donor? Well, the universal donor is really this guy right here. Actually, let me do that in a different color. This guy right here. He's really the universal donor because he has absolutely zero antigens. He doesn't have any A's, he doesn't have any B's, and he also doesn't have any of the rhesus. The universal recipient is really this guy right here. AB positive. He can get A's, he recognizes those, check. He can get B blood, he recognizes that, check. And he can get any positive blood. Okay, so now with blood types, you can only give positive blood to other positive people. So O positive blood can go to anybody who's positive. A positive blood can only go to other A positive people or AB positive people. If you're negative, you can give your blood to more people because with the negative people, let's look over here on the negative side, A negative, you can give your blood to own people, A negative people. You can give your blood to AB negative people. Okay. You can give your blood to A positive people because the negative doesn't mean anything. It's sort of like the 0. The negative just means it doesn't have that other one. So A negative, your body recognizes the A, and the fact that it's negative just means there's nothing else there. So A positive people can still get it. And then AB positive people can still get A negative blood. You recognize the A's, and then there's nothing else there. So negative people can give to more people. They can give to other negative, and they can also give to positive. Positive people can only give to other positive because they've got that rhesus antigen, so you can only give to other people with the rhesus antigen or their body would attack it. So again, universal donor is O negative. They can give to anybody. Universal recipient is AB positive. They can accept from anybody because they recognize A's, they recognize B's, they recognize the positive rhesus antigen. And then if you give them a negative type of blood, it's fine because they still recognize the A part of it, the B part of it, or the AB, and then there is no other antigen to recognize. Okay.